교육을 하기
국제 얘기를 걸을 수 있는 기회를 부여하신 뜻을 마음속 깊이 새기며
KAL Flight 858 is named one of the biggest tragic aviation mystery. A flight scheduled from Baghdad to Seoul was bombed. The North Korean spy who was responsible for the attack was caught, but many questions remain if she really was a spy or a scapegoat. And could pretty privilege have played a role in pardoning a deadly suspect? How come most of the wreckage has still never been found even today? And if the truth about what really happened to KL 858 is still out there, would it ever be revealed? I think it's my first time ever talking about a flight mystery. And yes, even me, when I get on flights, I get very nervous. Like, look, come on. If something happens on the flight, you can't like get out of the car and be on the ground. And comment down below if you guys were ever on a flight and was in an emergency situation where something really terrifying or scary happened on the plane. Comment down below. And am I looking super mystery solved ready today? Look at my glasses, you guys. It's my new glasses. I kid you not. I have not done my glasses in like over 3 years, and I've been using this one every single day. Finally, I was able to get some affordable, cute glasses from GRAZYTV.com. So thank you so much to today's sponsor for supporting true crime videos. Getting glasses and your prescription done is so expensive, but GRAZYTV.com cuts out the middleman and offers 10,000 prescription glasses and sunglasses, including in-house brands and designer brands like Ray-Ban, Gucci, and many more, up to 70% off retail prices. This one has UV protection and advanced blue light blocking lenses. If you don't know your prescriptions, they have this prescription finding app. You're able to calibrate it somehow, technology, and find your prescriptions. Like, you don't even have to go to the doctors. I did it. They also have virtual try-ins, so you could get a glimpse of what you're gonna look like in those fashionable glasses. It was also my first time getting a sunglass with prescription lenses, and oh my god, it's a game changer. I used to put like my glasses and sunglasses on top of it so that I could actually see with my sunglasses. It feels so amazing to upgrade my glasses, you guys. It's been years since I've done it, so thank you so much to Glasses USA, and you guys could check them out by clicking the link in my description box below. They deliver it right to your door, and literally I didn't have to step a foot outside. I did everything in my computer. It's also risk-free, free shipping and returns, 100% money-back guarantee. I mean, you have nothing to lose. Get yourself some nice new pairs of glasses. A much-needed upgrade, and let's get to the video. On November 29th, 1987, it was just like any other day, or to some, it was an exciting day as 104 passengers embarked a Korean Air flight, or KAL 858. Especially in the 80s, I heard flying was not a common thing. I heard that flying was expensive, or it was like a luxury thing that someone did. And there wasn't like much direct flights. A lot of flights have to be stopped. And these days, you know, people fly anywhere. It's not that exciting anymore. But among those boarded, many say that they were actually young, hard workers who worked overseas in the Middle East in construction industry to make money for their families and would only be able to return home every few years. So a lot of people who boarded were excited to see their families that they haven't in years. There was also a South Korean diplomat who worked at the South Korean embassy in Baghdad who boarded the flight as well, and he was with his wife. KAL 858 was an international flight, and they were to fly from Baghdad, Iraq, and stop over Abu Dhabi, then Bangkok, Thailand, and finally to Seoul, South Korea. The plane departed as planned from Iraq to Abu Dhabi, then departed on its way to Bangkok, Thailand. Unfortunately, the flight never arrived to its destination, and midway to Thailand, the plane exploded over the Andaman Sea. Everyone aboard was killed, a total of 104 passengers and 11 crew members, totaling 115 people who passed away. Most, if not almost all the passengers were Korean citizens, one Indian national and one Lebanese national that aborted the flight. The last radio message by the pilot was, "We expect to arrive in Bangkok on time." And shortly after that, communication was lost. When the news of the plane never arriving to South Korea spread, the families and passengers all gathered in the airport, and it was a sea of tears. Knowing that your father, your brother, your son, your daughter is in that plane, how would you have felt? People were wanting answers. I mean, they were crying, screaming, and unfortunately, like, nobody could provide answers right away. It took a couple days, and they were not able to locate the wreckage, but were quickly able to figure out that it was not a natural cause or a technical issue. It was a terrorist bombing. The Bahrain authorities alerted the South Korean authorities, saying that there were 2 Asian people claiming to be Japanese. They were acting very suspicious and soon realized that they could be related to this plane crash. The ultimate culprit was soon revealed to be a North Korean woman named Kim Hyun-hee, who was just 25 years old, and people couldn't believe that the culprit could be this young, pretty, innocent-looking woman. I mean, she was an opposite of what people would have thought, and they even called her the virgin terrorist. And this is when the long and controversial investigation would begin. So first off, who are these 2 agents? How did they even pull this off? And what happened to the prior days of November 29th? So 17 days prior to the incident on November 12th, the 2 North Korean agents, who was 1 male and 1 female, flew from North Korea to Moscow, Russia. From what I've read, normal citizens from North Korea cannot just fly. It had to be a special permission, so clearly these 2 people had permissions to fly out of North Korea. And from Russia, they would travel to different parts of Europe, from Hungary to Austria, Yugoslavia, and some other countries in between, then to Baghdad, Abu Dhabi, and of course where the incidents took place. So they weren't alone in doing this. This was a well thought out plan. We would later figure out that while they were in Europe, there were other North Korean agents already there providing them houses and food, and eventually to the radio bomb that they used. Not only the materials, but these 2 agents were ordered to unalive themselves if they were ever caught or unsuccessful in the mission. So they were given these special cigarettes, which was laced with special materials that would unalive themselves almost immediately. The 2 agents also got around mostly by trains, and in Europe you could get around easily to different countries by just trains, and you don't have to fly. But somehow with this radio explosive that they were given by other agents in Europe, they were somehow able to fly the plane in Serbia to Iraq. Again, from what I read, they did have x-rays and security, but obviously it's not like what we have today. But it is still a mystery of how they were even able to go through x-rays and security with an explosive. And we'll get to this mystery later again, but it's also one of a question that was never answered. Like, how were they even able to fly the planes, even if it was masked on our radio? So I mean, like, what's the whole point of screening if you're not going to be able to screen this? Somehow they passed the screening. They were in Iraq. They boarded the KAL 858 plane, and they put the radio on their overhead carrier bin in seat 7B and 7C. And after they arrived at Abu Dhabi International Airport, that's when they disembarked the plane, never to come back after switching on the ticking time bomb. So the plane left without them, having their luggage just placed on the overhead bin. And again, to let you guys know, there weren't direct flights back then, so there were a lot of stops going by. So I guess people would sometimes leave and come back. The plane would take off from Abu Dhabi to Thailand when around 2:05 p.m. Korean time, 9 hours after the bomb was switched on, it detonated. When the agents tried to flee, they tried to fly to Amman, Jordan, but they were not allowed due to some visa issues, so they flew back to Bahrain, hoping to get to Rome next to escape. In Bahrain, their passports were found to be forged by the authorities and were awaiting detention. Both of them took out their special cigarette in an attempt to unalive themselves on the spot, and the male agent actually ended up passing away, and the female agent, Kim, had her cigarette taken away by the authorities in Bahrain before she could ever do that to herself. Kim, aka Mayumi, the Japanese name that she went by, was questioned very hard and still posed as a Chinese orphan who grew up in Japan, and that she wasn't related to this case, she doesn't know what's happening. Apparently, during the interrogation, she even tried to attack the officers. They later found out, using information from that cigarette that she had, that most likely she was a North Korean, and they contacted the South Korean authorities and extradited her there. On December 19th, she was finally extradited and landed in South Korea, and as you could see, she is very disoriented. I don't know what that thing is in her mouth is and why they put that there. In South Korea, she still denied any involvement, and it took her some days. So who was Kim? Kim was again only 25 years old back then in 1987. And according to her bio, her father was a diplomat in North Korea. And usually families with those higher backgrounds than normal civilians are able to go out of the country and serve, whatever purposes for the country in other places like Cuba, which is where she grew up as well. And it was said that she was also trained to be a special entertainer, a singer, an actress, and she was also a flower girl during political events. Now, these are highly prized positions in North Korea, so this girl was, picked from her birth to begin with. Kim's life sounds like a movie out of 007. Apparently, she was trained to be experienced spy, a North Korean spy. At just the age of 19, she was said to be trained in martial arts, physical training. They're shown all these videos and speeches about protecting their country and why they're doing the things that they're doing. They're also taught different languages, including Japanese, Chinese, and English, so that they can pose as different nationalities during their missions. They also learn about different toxins, how to use guns, and various ways to unalive a person. Again, it's literally like the 007 movie. Like there are actually trained spies out there. Also, she was taught how to use credit cards, how to go to the disco or the club, because they didn't have that in North Korea. So they were taught to act like a normal human being. People who have met her say that she was very smart, very sophisticated, very well trained, and the perfect candidate for a spy or an agent. So finally, she was deemed ready 7 years into her training. She claims that she was also handpicked by then dictator of North Korea, Kim Il-sung himself. So she knew that this was an important mission. If she succeeded, she was promised to be able to live happily and come back to her family in North Korea and no more missions for her. That's when she traveled to Europe, where she met her fake father, the second male agent, and they posed as a father-daughter Japanese duo, and the rest is history, what happened after that. So again, for the first couple days, she denied everything, and apparently in South Korea, when she was extradited, she was taken to tour around Seoul. She was shown all these videos and taught about the freedom in South Korea, and that everything she was taught is actually false. And after 8 days of interrogation, which is very short in my opinion, Kim finally confessed and started to spill about her real identity and what really happened to Flight 858. And according to the South Korean authorities, apparently Kim was impressed by the freedom and everything she has seen here. Which, in my opinion, I feel like 8 days is very short in order to say that you wiped out everything that you've been brainwashed for your whole entire life. So I don't know, maybe Kim thought that, she really had to confess or she was gonna be in big, deathly trouble. She came out on public media and she confessed and she told her story that she was a North Korean agent. People were pissed. They hated her. She was the most hated person at that time. She was to face trial, and the trial took 2 years. And finally, in 1990, she was sentenced to death, and this was on TV everywhere. I mean, I'm like, how? This girl knows martial arts. She knows all different languages. Like, she knows how to fight and unalive someone and kill people. And that's why they called her the virgin terrorist. But surprisingly, only 16 days into her sentence, the then South Korean president, Do Tae-woo, would pardon her. And she was released from prison soon after. The reason was they claimed that she was brainwashed by North Korea, and she was actually another victim. This is how she grew up, and she just did something that she was told to do. Killing someone like her would not be an advantage because they needed to keep her alive so that she could spill some secrets and security stuff about North Korea. Because after this bombing incident, North Korea was put into an official terrorist watch list by the UN. And actually, North Korea in the UN meeting claimed that they didn't have anything to do with this. They don't know who she is. And there would be no benefit of North Korea doing this to South Korea because there was already big tensions between them.
석제기를 걸을 수 있는 기회를 부여하신 뜻을 마음속 깊이 새기며 다시 부활한 새 사람으로 열심히 살아가겠다고 다짐하였습니다.
Families were so angry. They were not happy. This is an evil woman in their eyes who have literally murdered, like a serial killer murdered their beloved family members. I mean, there were many rumors that surfaced after this, such as, was this a political move? Did they do this because she's young and beautiful and that, she had a whole life ahead of her? I mean, let's say the second male agent was caught. Would they pardon him too? Would he have? After she was pardoned, you could see her on TV saying that the investigators were treating her kindly and that after she had no harm done to her and she wasn't restricted in any way. And this obviously made a lot of people pissed, especially the families. So here are the questions and the mysteries regarding this case because a lot of information did not make sense. So number one, the plane wreckage was never found. Actually, later on, after years, they did find like some pieces, but very few little pieces. They were never able to find like bodies or the main parts of the plane. Families couldn't believe that allegedly after a huge explosion, like where are the wreckages? And apparently the black box of planes, if something ever happens, still emits signals. And even before the signal went out of battery, the rescue was called off. An apparent search and rescue only lasted 10 days. That was not enough and not enough effort to find this plane and bring it back home. Number two, there were confession letters that supposedly was written by Kim before she left the countries for her mission, which was published in the newspapers. When people took a look at these letters, they found that Kim did not use the proper North Korean dialect or grammar. For example, this word right here, there's no way that a North Korean would know this because this was not used by North Koreans. And then just a day after this controversy, in another newspaper, they were released the same exact confession papers with the writing changed. So clearly someone was altering and changing these confession letters and it was just so obvious. When people were questioning these things, the officials claimed that this was actually rewritten by Kim herself during the interrogation. And people are obviously not buying these strange answers. Number three, Kim claimed that she was the flower girl during a political exchange between the North and South Korea side in 1972. And here are videos and photos. And she claimed that this girl was her. Now this was all filmed on camera again, but later on there was a North Korean woman in North Korea who came forward and said, wait, that's me. That's not her. This is me. And experts also were able to analyze the ear shape. So it's developed 90% by childhood, and Kim's ears were very different than this girl's ears. Authorities and Kim herself went back to the pictures and said, oh, actually, the girl behind her is me, not her. And that she just mistakenly mistaked some other girl for her, which also fueled even more mystery because it's like, how do you not realize like your own childhood photos? Like, how do you mistake that? Then a Japanese journalist who dug deep into Kim's case have noticed some discrepancies from original statements to that of her autobiography. She wrote an autobiography in 1991 explaining her childhood and, her side of the story. In the autobiography where she went into detail about the hotel room numbers, what kind of hotel she stayed in, was all different than her original interrogation statements. So he claims that the part where Kim was questioned about is she really telling the truth or not and discrepancies of her statements, she would change them to fit that narrative in her autobiography, which led many to believe that she is lying here. But could little statements like hotel names and hotel numbers sometimes get mixed up? Maybe. Authorities did go to some of the hotels that she stayed in, and they did find their names in the guest checkbooks, so they did stay there at the time. And the next one is a little complicated and there isn't solid proof, but a lot of people do find it interesting that only a day after she was extradited to South Korea was the day of the presidency election, which made a lot of people question and raise their shoulders. Could this have been an inside job or a political move, possibly wanting to influence the election to elect the person that would protect the country, which was the side that was pro-hard military. This side that seemed to be losing and not gaining favor of the nation wanted to stay in power, and by having this kind of terrorist thing happen in the country, Now people want a lot of protection. People want justice. And after this case, the nation was angry. I mean, they really wanted protection of South Korea. So even without the wreckage of the plane, the way the investigation was able to be resolved was because they had a confession from Kim, someone that said, hey, I did it. So with the confession, they technically didn't need all the wreckage and proof. But with all these discrepancies, people wonder if there was even an explosion. They actually found a lifeboat from apparently KAL 858. And apparently this lifeboat was very near the seats that was supposedly where Kim and the agent was staying. Now apparently this explosion definitely should have affected this lifeboat, but this lifeboat was like undamaged. There was no burn marks, nothing. It was like in perfect condition. So how could that be if there was such a big explosion that brought down the plane? Also, with the small parts of the plane that was actually found, there weren't enough pieces to conclude that there was an explosion or not. Also, a mystery that was never solved was like Kim claimed that they had this radio. It's a small radio. But experts say that there's no way you could put all the components and parts of the explosion that they had into this size. Until this day, that question has never been answered. It should be a much bigger radio. And the fact that they claim it was this size, it just doesn't make sense to experts. Now, the South Korean side claimed that North Korea has done this possibly because the 1988 Olympics that was held in South Korea was coming up. And the North side purposely did not want this Olympics to succeed, and they wanted foreigners to fear South Korea, saying, hey, this is a dangerous country, let's not go there. And that there was a big economic competition between them, and this is one of the reasons why North planned this. In 2020, divers found what potentially could be the KAL 858 through a sonar technology, but this wreckage has never been recovered yet. Families are still hoping that they would be able to bring their family members. This is the wife of the co-pilot from the flight, and she was just 41 years old when she lost her husband. I mean, she was very young, and now she's in her 70s. She claims that she truly never had a happy day ever since, and she cannot get rid of the image of her husband with his briefcase leaving for work. Kim, in her autobiography, wrote that when she was a child, she thought about everything she was taught growing up, that she would be a national hero for North Korea, but instead she felt like her whole life was a lie, and she realized she was a murderer and not a hero. The book did very well. It was read by a lot of people, and she used the profits to donate to the families, and she was able to somehow make a little living for herself so that she can continue living in South Korea. She ended up marrying her security guard during this case. I thought that was interesting. She has 2 kids now, I believe, and she remains living in an undisclosed location, but she does say she never lived a normal life. She's in her 60s now, and she makes rare appearances, and she claims that she lives with guilt every single day. Some people sympathize with her because technically she was a puppet all her life. She never had a voice of her own because she was being used. I mean, she was a trained killer. I mean, in South Korea, she was a murderer. And in North Korea inside, they see her as a traitor who did not unalive herself and did not succeed in the mission. People think that's a sad life. Now, I'm not sure if this was confirmed, but apparently Kim's family back in North Korea was sentenced to hard labor. So what do you guys think? This mystery and the re-investigations of what happened to this flight, it's still ongoing today, but no progress has really been published. What do you guys think is the truth about the Flight 858? And will we even ever know the truth? I do think that there's just too many questions that are unanswered about Kim and, her discrepancies. But regardless, at the end of the day, all these innocent victims' lives were taken away, and it's the families who suffer. I think it would kill me to not know the answers. Remember to like this video and share if you found it interesting. Really helps me out a lot. And if there's any other cases you want me to cover, email me right here, and see you guys in my next video.